Ethiopia is guilty of genocide. Listen to those words that you just heard. If you're listening closely, just listen to those words that you just heard. Ethiopia is guilty of genocide. And why is that so important and why is that so powerful? You know, it's the middle of the day. And I usually talk about this in the evening and I do some other stuff during the day, but I haven't had a chance to kind of tap in and touch spaces about what's happening in Ethiopia because so much stuff is going on in this world. So much is happening locally. But I want you to know the genocide in Tigray is not over. And there's someone who's watching this right now and they're going to maybe perhaps ask the question, what is genocide? They might ask, what is genocide? They might ask, where is Ethiopia? They might get deep and say, what is Ethiopia? And then a deeper question, if you know where Ethiopia is and what Ethiopia is, you might ask the question, is Ethiopia falling apart? Is Ethiopia falling apart? You might ask that question also, but there are a lot of other questions to ask. But what I'd like for you to do is to share this right now because someone doesn't know that there's a genocide taking place, and sometimes we get locked into what's happening locally in our neighborhood, perhaps at our school, and then we think what's happening way over there or somewhere else is not relevant to us. And I want you to know that it is relevant to you. Everything that I'm going to share with you today, you're going to probably be able to make some connections to your daily life. Like, for example, there's someone that's watching this that has adopted an Ethiopian child. There's someone here in the diaspora, whether you're in these United States of America, maybe you're in Europe, or maybe you are, somewhere, anywhere other than Ethiopia, you may have adopted what you think of as an Ethiopian child. There might even be a deeper discussion. You may have been born outside of Ethiopia, but you consider yourself Ethiopian because your parents are from Ethiopia, but you're not really sure how to answer the questions that Brother Jeff is posing to everyone else. Like, you may have never been to Ethiopia. You may have never been to Ethiopia. But perhaps your parents are Ethiopian. And you don't know what an Ethiopian is. You certainly know where Ethiopia is. But you might not even be really concerned if Ethiopia is falling apart. Like, you might be just like a lot of others and say, well, I'm British. I'm from France. I'm from Germany. I'm from Switzerland. I'm from these United States of America. I'm from the Caribbean. And if Ethiopia is falling apart, I'm Ethiopian. But I'm not really Ethiopian. It's kind of like those African Americans. They say, I'm African, but I'm not African. See how complicated it gets? See how complicated it gets? Usually when I begin my show, I always say, for those of you who are not familiar with the trigger alert, it goes like this. The trigger alert. This is a show that triggers people because you've entered a free think zone. If you're not willing to be exposed to other points of view, tune out now and don't read the comments. You have been warned. And you're going to see some experts that are going to chime in. They're going to chime in and they're going to say things about Ethiopia as if they know. Like, they're going to be people who are perhaps even watching from Ethiopia, they're going to chime in and they're going to say things like, Brother Jeff doesn't know what he's talking about. Why are you talking about Ethiopia? What's going on with Ethiopia is none of your concern. And I'm going to tell that person, you don't even know what Ethiopia is all about. And you're like right there, like right now. You're like, most of you are like right there right now, and you don't know what Ethiopia is about. But I'm about to break some things down. I'm going to break some things down. But the first thing I want to share with you is that there is a genocide taking place in Tigray. Where's Tigray? North of Ethiopia, south of Eritrea, east of the Sudan, and in the hearts of the Tigray people throughout the diaspora. And you're going to say, well, Brother Jeff, I thought that Tigray was a part of Ethiopia. And then I'm going to tell you that that's exactly what the Tigray people believed also. But they've left the building for many reasons that I'll share as it relates to the Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, who's gone into partnership with EISS Afwerki, however you say it. EISIS. Don't worry about how I say it, just worry about what I'm saying. Afwerki. He's from Eritrea, and Abiy Ahmed got a peace prize because he hooked up with EISS or whatever his name is, Afwerki. He gets a peace prize. Donald J. Trump, the president, says, well, I hooked that up. I should have got the Nobel Peace Prize, but he gave it to that black guy over there. What were they hooking up? They were hooking up the takeover of what you call Ethiopia. And if you want to get real deep about it, and you're going to ask, what is this all about? It's all about that damn dam. It's all about that damn dam. It's all about that damn dam. It's like the Renaissance dam. So if you want to stop talking right now and you're like, what is it all about? I can tell you most of it is about land, water, and in this case, that damn dam. Because it's always about land and water. The power is always about land, water, power, and they generally around the world don't care about the masses of people. Like, people are not necessarily the greatest concern as it relates to power. So Isaias Afwerki is a dictator in East Africa. They've under his leadership, they've never had an election. And so some of you are about to say, I'm Eritrean, hooray! But none of you will go to Eritrea. I'm Eritrean, hooray! But you'll never go to Eritrea. Like, folks are trying to get out of Eritrea. So this is a lesson for those of you who are going to be talked to by individuals from the Horn of Africa or somebody that has studied Africa that's going to justify genocide to you. And you're going to be like, genocide? But there's no genocide but. When you hear the word genocide, genocide means stop. Well, they're raping women, but they're starving children and families, but they're shooting civilians, but they're using food as a weapon, but they're destroying communication, but they don't have banking and access to just the decencies and the basic necessities of life, but well, they destroyed the farmland, but they destroyed the animals, but they're destroying the historical sites, churches, mosques, etc. But there's no but. There's no but. And if you say but after any of that, then that tells me that you and I are not on the same page as it relates to humanity. You and I are not on the same page as it relates to humanity. So, for a moment, I want to talk to the folks that are human, if you will. Because if you're raping in the name of power, there's something less than human about you. If you're doing any of that in the form of power, and then you want to justify to Brother Jeff, you can't talk about that. That's none of your business. I'm Ethiopian. Something is wrong with your thinking. For those of you who are just tuning in, this has been taking place for 331 days. 331 days. I'm going to say that again because some of you are going to bring up the fact that there was a Rwanda genocide, and then the world was saying there will never be a genocide again, genocide no more. Genocides are taking place all over the world, but right now the Rwanda genocide took place over 100 days. The genocide of Tigray is at 331 days, and depending on what side of the pond you're on, it's 332 days. I'm going to break some stuff down for you in just a second. For those of you who believe I shouldn't be talking about this, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but I haven't forgot that I want to talk to those of you who I have adopted Ethiopian children, or you're Ethiopian and you've never been to Ethiopia, or maybe you passed by it once or twice. Why don't you ask yourself the question, why are you not in Ethiopia if you are Ethiopian? Now, I can tell you why there are a lot of black folks, or what you might call African American or original people inside of North America who came against their own will. But, however, if you're Ethiopian, I can guarantee you, if you are outside of Ethiopia and your parents had to flee Ethiopia so that you can have basic safety because your government was committing genocide or atrocities and you had to escape for political reasons, etc., what you're seeing is history repeating itself. You're seeing history repeating itself, and it constantly repeats itself. So for those of you, I'm going to give you an open book exam, and I'm going to give you some questions that you can ask individuals when they say they're Ethiopian, or if you've adopted an Ethiopian. The best question you can ask is, well, what kind of Ethiopian did I adopt? See, Gerald, they never thought you would never think to ask this question. Like, well, what kind of Ethiopian are you? Because, see, what happens is you pick up your little Ethiopian child, and then you take your little Ethiopian child to the Ethiopian celebration or the Ethiopian gathering, and nobody's playing with your child because you don't realize that there's so much hate and enmity that's taking place. You don't know which kind of Ethiopian you taking to the party, because some think they're better than others. Some think they're better than others. And why do they think they're better than others? Well, should I really just like break this all the way down, Gerald? I'm gonna just give them to them a little bit at a time. Okay, we're doing international today. This is geopolitics. This is stuff they won't teach you in school. They just tell you that Ethiopia is very old. They tell you like Ethiopia is it's not historic. Ethiopia is prehistory. Like when you start studying Ethiopia, Ethiopia is prehistory. There are a couple of things that I got to share with you all, if you don't mind, how I break this up. When I talk about Ethiopia, I want you to keep this in mind. I break this down into three sections. The Aksumite kingdom, I'm going even like after Punt, I'm saying the Aksumite kingdom, and Aksumite never considered themselves an Ethiopian. If you found somebody of the Aksumite kingdom and you called them an Ethiopian, they would probably look at you like you were from outer space. You find somebody from the Aksumite kingdom and you called them an Ethiopian, they would look at you like you were from outer space. Well, let's move forward because I break it down a little further. I'm going to tell you that Ethiopia is only about 150 years old, so you don't have to get into the millions of years of Ethiopian history as you get into, these history books. I'm going to tell you, you don't even have to do that. I'm going to tell you Ethiopia is about 150 years old. Gerald, did you know that? Ethiopia is about 150 years old. Well, let me just tell you, prior to 150 years ago, go look at anything and tell me if it doesn't say Abyssinian. Go to that church in New York and tell me, is it the Ethiopian church or is it the Abyssinian church? So in that period of time, if you went up to somebody and called them an Ethiopian, and they considered themselves a part of Abyssinia, then they wouldn't even know what you're talking about. Today, if you run up to somebody and you call them Ethiopian, they might not know about Abyssinia or even the kingdom of Aksum or their own particular history, because oppression leads to the erasure of your history. So even what we're talking about is usually from the ruling class, because those who are the victors get to write the history. So when all of you get to arguing with me about what is and what isn't Ethiopia and what is in true history, and you don't even know. You just know what the winners told you. And half of you won't even talk to your mama, your grandmama, your great-grandmama, because you're so used to jumping into Europe and you say, I went to Harvard, I went to Oxford. And then what they told you is automatically your history, and you won't even listen to your grandmama or your mama, because you're so busy trying to be Harvard, Oxford. And I guarantee you go to Harvard or Oxford, they're going to tell you just what I told you. Ethiopia is about 150 years old. The problem with black folks is that you're so inundated with white supremacist ideas about yourself, you can't even recognize yourself when you see yourself. But keep in mind, this is about genocide. So no matter what you take from what I'm saying today, what I want you to walk away with is this. There's a genocide in Tigray. It's been going on for 331 days. You have women, men, children, etc. that are being starved, targeted, shot, raped. All of this is documented in all types of sources, and many of us never heard of Tigray. And if you do hear about Tigray, it's somebody who's saying it's Tigray. We're very concerned about what's going on in Tigray. First of all, it's Tigray. Tigray is over in Eritrea. Eritrea is a word that means Red Sea, and it's Italian. So you're going to tell me that that part of the Horn of Africa is Italy? Oh, but then you're going to tell me Ethiopia is Greek? Because this is the word that they used for black folks in general. It's kind of like saying I'm black. What does that mean? We're giving you a clinic today. Make sure somebody shares this and lets someone know that there's a genocide taking place in Tigray. I haven't had a chance to talk about it in a few days, but I've been talking about it with Ndele and Mickey Tigray and Tigray Media House and Omni Tigray. So, I mean, so many folks are out there putting the information out. We just need it to be shared because it's 331 days of genocide. There should be a sense of urgency as it relates to what I'm talking about, and I'm encouraging somebody to go ahead and share this. I'm encouraging somebody to go ahead and share this because the clinic is going to continue. Are you ready? We're going to talk Ethiopia. We're going to talk Ethiopia. Have you ever heard of an emperor? Like, say, for example, have you ever heard of the word Emperor Haile Selassie? Anybody heard of Emperor Haile Selassie? Well, let's back this up for just a moment, because there's a religion and followers of a faith, and they call themselves Rastafarians. Rastafarians. Ras is like king, or some would say Ricey, depending on how you pronounce it. Rastafari, when he was crowned King of Kings, and the way Europeans might say that is emperor, it's Emperor Haile Selassie, same person. But that's not the point that I want to make right now. I've got some more that I want to share with you. What is an emperor? Let's break this down. What is an emperor? What is an emperor? An emperor is the head of an empire. What is an empire? Well, if you've got an emperor and his name is Haile Selassie, then he is the head of an empire. And if you're thinking about Ethiopia, then Ethiopia is an empire, like the United States, like any other empire that has taken place over the entire globe. So if it's an empire, how do empires come about? Empires come about through conquest and expansion. And so when you think about Ethiopia and you think about it not in the context of an empire, then you're going to be off base. You're going to be lost. You're going to be somewhere thinking about all these folks together, 100 million folks, they all Ethiopians. Nope, you got a whole bunch of folks that have been conquered at one point in time or another. When's the last time you fell in love with your conqueror? When you fall in love with your conqueror, that's when you've been fully colonized. Let me break this down for you just a little bit further. Since somebody might think I'm not talking about what I'm talking about. Emperor Haile Selassie, which you have to agree, dominated world politics as it relates to the continent for close to 60 years. Profound. But it depends on which side of the profound you're looking at. But do you know that prior to Menelik, where Haile Selassie was born in Harar, Haile Selassie wouldn't even have been an Ethiopian. I know what you're saying, Brother Jeff. What do you know about Harar? I know I've been through all them 5 gates. I done my doctorate work over there. The place where Haile Selassie was born, where his father, Makanin, was the Ross at that particular time, for Menelik, would not have even been considered Ethiopia prior to Menelik's conquering of that particular area. See, Ethiopia is an empire. Some of you are talking about Addis Ababa, which I call Finfini. Finfini. I'm giving you a history lesson. But again, before I get real deep into all of this stuff, what I want you to know is that there's a genocide taking place in Tigray. And regardless of what I'm saying and how I'm saying it, genocide is never a good thing. And people of goodwill should not only be aware of it, but they should be demanding that it stops. Now back to Finfini. Do you know Menelik was from the south? Menelik was a ruler or an emperor or a king from the south. Shua. Do you know that it was him along with his wife that traveled a little further north into Finfini, and like all folks in power do, they changed the name to reflect what they want to name it? That's where the name Addis Ababa came from. It's very recent. So there was a time when Addis Ababa, i.e. Finfini, was not a part of Ethiopia. See, I'm talking to you about empire. And I'm talking to you about what happens when people are conquered and their leadership is toppled and their assets are stolen or what they call incorporated into the conquering party's growing empire. And just because you consider them folks Ethiopian or whatever you want to call it, the folks that are conquered might never consider themselves Ethiopian. Some might not say Addis Ababa. Some might remember Finfini. This history is so incredibly fascinating if you study it, because I'm just giving you some history of what you call Ethiopia, and I know that there's some folks out there talking to me about, I don't know what I'm talking about. I can tell you one thing that I'm talking about. I'm telling you that genocide is never a good thing. And it doesn't matter what side of the pond you are on, what your ethnic leanings are, what your income level is, how much wealth you've accumulated. If you believe rape is a good thing, if you believe starvation is a good thing, if you believe using hunger as a weapon is a good thing, if you believe targeting citizens is a good thing, if you believe denying folks access to medical care is a good thing, then I'm telling you, you're less than human. You're probably even less than an animal. But let's continue. So there was a time in terms of this Ethiopian story where even the king or the emperor that you know of, Haile Selassie, wouldn't have even been considered an Ethiopian. As a matter of fact, with Menelik and those in the south, they would have never been considered Ethiopian or Abyssinian or Oxamites or whatever you want to call it. They would have never been considered that. But I can tell you who would always been considered all of those things. From Oxum. Did you know Oxum, that's where the Tigray people are? Do you know that everything you find near and dear as it relates to the history of Ethiopia, mainly that you study, is in Tigray? Did you know that those steles are in Tigray? Did you know that King Gazana, who accepted the Christian faith in the 4th century or 3rd century, whatever it is, we do know was one of the first to accept the Christian faith? Did you know that's in Tigray? Did you know that when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was being persecuted inside of Mecca before he sent his followers to Medina, that his followers first went to Tigray? I know, it makes you curse, don't it? Do you know that when you talk about the earliest bones that are found, you might call it the Afar region, but before that, that was Tigray? And just because you all call those bones Lucy, it's just like you call yourself Ethiopian because white folks called you Ethiopian. Now you identify as Ethiopian. They also call them bones, the earliest bones, Lucy. They call those bones Lucy because a white guy so-called discovered those bones and named Lucy after a Beatles song. And then you go up and you say, no, it's not Lucy, it's Dinkanish. You're like, hold up a second. You got to say, hold up. You got to say, hold up a second. Dinkanish is Amharic. I already told you that it was in the Tigray region. The Amharic and the Tigrayans are not the same folks. But when you start naming names in Tigray and you start using the language of the Amharic language inside of Tigray, what you're saying is that the power base has used their language to define what Ethiopia is. The language of Ethiopia is Amharic. And all those folks are not Amharic. Right now, the configuration of what you call Ethiopia has at least 10 states. But if you don't speak Amharic, then you probably don't think you're Ethiopian. Tisbiktiya. In other words, she is beautiful. That's how you call Lucy or Dinkanish in the Tigray language. But if you want to go further, as you study the language, as the empire expands, Everyone is incorporated inside of this language called the Amharic language. In other words, those of you who find yourself in ruling positions, you had to do two things. You had to accept Christianity, and you had to accept the culture of the Amharic people to be considered a real Ethiopian.